If you keep ending up in the same places in your relationships and you can't quite figure out why, maybe you got jealous, anxious, or maybe even controlling over something small and you just couldn't seem to stop yourself. Maybe she pulled back and you spent the rest of the day replaying everything that you did wrong. Maybe you walk on eggshells, you agree with things that you actually don't agree with, and you bottle everything up, try to keep the peace, until of course it all eventually comes out and you say something that you immediately regret. Now, if you connected to any of that, then this video is for you. Not because I'm going to give you another framework or another tactic, but because after helping over 210 men over the last 7 years, I know something that most people will never tell you. The reason that all this keeps happening isn't what you think it is. And until you actually understand what's driving it, nothing will actually stick. Now, here's what I know about you. You have probably already tried to fix this. And I know that because most of the men who I've worked with or who I've chatted to aren't starting from scratch. They've tried everything. They've read the books, they've been to therapy, and you've probably even seen more than one therapist if you've been to therapy. You've journaled, you've meditated, you may have even tried all the red pill stuff, the dopamine detoxes, the psychedelics, the years of binging all the content, and now you're probably just battling it out with ChatGPT, trying to solve the problem. This has been true of just about every man that I've spoken to prior to us working together. And yet after all that work, they were still showing up in the exact same way in their relationships, in their life, around their friends, at work, and still battling this ongoing sense of unworthiness, inadequacy, and the feeling that they're not enough. Now, the problem isn't that you didn't try hard enough. It's that almost everything that you have tried didn't give you the root solution. They just addressed all the symptoms. So it gave you more understanding, more information, and more ways to describe all of your problems. But the problem is that understanding isn't enough. Understanding the problem and being able to actually stop it are two completely different things. See, the pattern doesn't live at the level of logic or conscious thought. They are buried in your unconscious, and that's why you can explain absolutely everything that you're doing wrong and do so in excruciating detail, but still not be able to stop. Now, if we haven't met yet, my name is Josh Smart. I'm the founder of Better Men Academy, and as you've probably already heard, I've helped over 210 men break patterns that talk therapy, content, and effort alone simply couldn't fix. And the reason why is simple, because I'm not working from a textbook. I'm working from real experience and from all of my hardships, having to develop these tools and break these patterns in myself. And this story is the reason that all of this exists today. See, in 2020, I made $18,000 in a month. I was in the best shape of my life, and yet I was actively tearing apart my relationship due to my own insecurities. I thought that if I fixed everything on the outside, that the rest would just kind of sort itself out, but it didn't. See, growing up, the environment around me that I lived in was incredibly unstable. There was conflict many nights of the week, if not every night at certain weeks, that I just didn't have any control over. Addiction destroyed the people that I loved, leaving me feeling neglected. Abuse that I witnessed and couldn't stop tore me apart, and I spent most of my teenage years locked in a room trying to block it all out. Again, I was just a nerdy kid. I was bullied at school, I felt unsafe at home, and I really didn't feel like I fit in anywhere except for in my video games. Really, I felt like a burden who was just completely unworthy of love. And then at 15, I tried weed, and I started smoking it every single day because I realized that it was a great way to numb all of the pain that I felt. And then on my 16th birthday, I was pushed to try MDMA for the first time, and I became completely addicted for the better part of a year. Now, it started as a distraction from all my problems, but then it quickly became the problem. And by the time I stopped, I had completely fried my brain. I could barely hold a conversation. Mid-sentence, I would just completely forget what I was saying. And the anxiety that I lived with was relentless. Now, at this point in my life, when my mental health was at its lowest, at least for that period of my life, my social life and my relationship just added fuel to that fire. In my friend group, I was the constant butt of every joke. I felt like a punching bag. And in my relationship, I was just trapped. It was insanely toxic. And to make matters worse, I was also silently suffering from ED, which really didn't help. And she even consistently threatened me with suicide to keep me from breaking up with her. So I felt stuck until I finally hit a breaking point. And I remember that day so clearly. As I bawled my eyes out on my bedroom floor, I made a choice. I decided I had to cut out the substances. I had to cut off all of that friend group. I had to break up with that girl, and I decided to sign up for the gym. And that for me was the beginning of the first real version of me, the first time that I'd found some sense of identity. But then I became obsessed. I started putting on muscle, I started reading, I built a business, I started to make what felt like to me at the time real money. And from the outside, I had it all together. But you want to know what no one tells you about building your sense of self and deriving all of your worth from accolades and from success and from external validation? Well, it fixes everything on the surface, but it leaves all of the stuff underneath completely untouched. And this is when the environment around me just started to collapse around me. Things that I'd been holding together through sheer effort started to completely fall apart, including my family, which collapsed, my health, which collapsed, and my relationship started to fall apart too. And I fell at this time into the darkest depression of my life. I lost 14 kilos in a month. My income dropped from 18K to 4 or 5K in the span of a month. I lost so many clients because I just didn't have the mental capacity or ability in any way to actually help them. And just about every single person around me abandoned me all at once. And at my lowest point, I got pretty messed up at a party, and I told everyone there, at least the people that were in that conversation, how dark things had actually gotten and that I didn't really want to be around anymore. And I woke up the next morning. I remember this so clearly. I didn't really remember much, but my girlfriend at the time told me everything that I said, and she, rightfully so, was worried sick. Now, this was the moment that I started trying everything: antidepressants, coaches, books, meditation, journaling, binge watching content. And while they all provided me with temporary relief and some nice ideas, none of them gave me a real and lasting solution. So I finally had to move out of the environment that I was in. And that was the same environment, the same room that I was in as a kid when all of these issues first began and surfaced. Like, that was where I first really realized that no one was coming to save me. And so the same feelings of powerlessness just engulfed me in adulthood. Now, this is when I started to find all of the principles that now sit at the foundation of Betterment Academy: ancient philosophy, modern psychology, shadow work, all of the inner work stuff that really worked at the root of the problems rather than just addressing the symptoms. And for the first time, things actually started to change. But the problem was, I still showed up in my relationships like someone who didn't really do the work, right? It was weird. While I felt happier, while I felt more at peace, generally speaking, my relationship really brought out the worst of me. At times I was anxious, at times I was avoidant. Really, it just depended on the day. And I would swing between jealousy and a fear that she was going to leave me to then shutting down in conversations that we really needed to have. And I'd also spent months consuming all the kind of advice that just made me so much worse. And you probably are going to resonate with this. The red pill content, the frameworks that look like strength and confidence, but were really just selfishness, in a way, narcissism. And it really damaged that relationship more than I understood at the time. And it wasn't until it ended that I really realized everything that had gone wrong. And when it did end, I didn't rush to try and get into another relationship. In fact, I realized at that time that I had some serious work to do on myself, especially before it was ever going to come time for me to get into another relationship. And so I took a year, no dating, no distractions, just an obsessive inner work process. And I really just dove deep into trying to understand what had actually happened and what had been running this show the entire time. The shitty relationship that I had with my self-worth, the attachment patterns and wounds that I still had, the places that I still didn't know who I actually was. And by the end of that year, something had really fundamentally shifted inside of me. Not just at a surface level, or I seemed different or appeared different, but it felt like a boulder of insecurity had finally been let go of. A boulder of insecurity that I'd carried since I was just a boy. And then I met my girlfriend. And this was when I really started to notice how all of the same patterns that plagued my old relationship weren't actually there anymore. And a couple of years on from then, and I now know that that's the case because in that previous relationship, I'd really just been suppressing all of these issues. But it was here and in this relationship with my girlfriend now that I really genuinely noticed that those patterns weren't there anymore. And again, it wasn't like I was trying to hide them or cover them up. It's just that the patterns weren't coming up anymore at all. And this was really the proof of concept for me. And to be clear, it wasn't just me. Luke had 3 different psychologists. He tried antidepressants, psychedelics, meditation, journaling, a dopamine detox. He tried everything. And these were the years of attempts that essentially, just like I keep saying, they kept addressing the symptoms, but they never got to the root, what was actually underneath. But after going through my mind clear process, he said that this was the first thing that actually worked. And in his words, he described it as the single most powerful thing that he's aware of to date to change your life. And he even said that he thought it should be taught in schools. And that's coming from a psychology student who is currently in university.
Take this from someone who has tried meditation, medication, 3 different psychologists, antidepressants, psychedelics, dopamine detox. I tried a lot of things, and I will say this is definitely up there with one of the most powerful things that I am aware of today. As someone who is studying psychology, this thing itself can really help, change your life, in my opinion. I don't think anyone truly knows the power of this thing. And I would urge a lot of people to really consider taking this. I really mean that. This is not a way to sell Josh's program. In no way am I affiliated with Josh, but I will say that this is very powerful stuff. It is very, very powerful stuff. And I think it is possibly a tool that should be taught in schools, isn't taught in schools. And I think it's something that should be utilized all throughout our lives. It's changed my life for the better, and I definitely think it can change yours too.
And then there's Neil, who said that his confidence 10x'd after a breakup that he went through. And he even started a construction business while we had gotten working together. And it's funny, he said that that was something that he never would have done in his old previous, identity, so to speak. And this wasn't because the program taught him business. It was because the version of him that believed that he wasn't capable of leading something and building something had been killed off. It had changed.
I wasn't happy with myself. I was very insecure. Anxiety was definitely a massive issue within my life. The difference between then and now is that confidence-wise is crazy through the roof. It comes naturally these days.
And Dylan said that an emotion that used to wreck him for 2 or 3 weeks was now able to be resolved in minutes, not by suppressing it or ignoring it or trying to bury it down, but by directly shifting the beliefs and perceptions that sat at the root of that issue.
It took this very negative, unproductive and lazy person and made them disciplined and productive. I'd had, prior to the program, a lot of anxiety, worry, shame, fear, depression, resentment. From prior to doing the program, an emotion that may have taken me a couple of weeks to just let die down has now, it can go down within minutes.
And Graham went from struggling to move on after a breakup, after just feeling like he really didn't show up in that relationship as the man that he needed to be, to completely clearing his attachment to his ex, and said that he now feels like he is prepared and that he is the man that he needs to be for the next relationship to thrive. And Ben went from having 1 or 2 panic attacks every single month to only having 1 over the course of 6 months. And something else that he didn't expect is that he actually realized that he healed the resentment that he'd been carrying towards his father for years. He even said that every time we went through one of these processes, that there was a breakthrough in areas that he hadn't even been trying to work on, in his relationships with his family, at work, and everything in between. Now, these were not men who needed more information. In fact, they already had all the information. Everyone has the information. Look around, you've got ChatGPT, you've got social media, you've got my reels and other people's reels, right? So these guys already had the information. What they needed was something to work at the level of their identity and all of their unconscious patterns. And that is what Better Men Academy is built to do. But Better Men Academy is not for every man. It's specifically built for the kind of man who sees himself in everything that I've said so far. The man who keeps ending up in the same insecure place in all of his relationships and has started to wonder if the problem is actually him. The man who can describe every single pattern he has in clinical detail and who has probably explained it to a therapist or written about it in a journal or even chatted about it back and forth with ChatGPT, but still can't stop defaulting back to those exact same patterns. The man who's done years of self-improvement, personal development, who has consumed all of the content, read all of the books, and is still feeling stuck. Still showing up in the same way in his relationships, and not understanding why nothing that he's tried has actually helped him change. This is the man who knows that what he's doing is wrong, and he knows that in the exact moment that he's doing it, but he just can't get himself to stop. The man who has started to feel like he's not the man he wants to be, who carries 2 versions of himself, one that the world sees, and the other one that he lives with privately, and he's exhausted by trying to keep this gap between them. The man who has wondered, at least in the moments that he's actually being honest with himself, whether at some point in his life he's ever actually going to feel like a secure man at all, or whether he's just gonna still stay the boy that he was, and just carrying it all into his adult relationship. The man who wonders whether this is just who he is, and the best that he can do is just kind of manage it all, or if there's actually some way that he can change. That man is who this was built for, because that is the man who I used to be. But this is specifically not for the man who's looking for a shortcut, who wants a script to text her with, or a tactic to seem more confident without actually changing what's underneath. And it's not for the man who is willing to look at everything except for himself, who is ready to work on the relationship, but not on the thing that's producing the relationship problems, himself. And it's not for the man who's waiting to feel ready or who's waiting for someone else to give him permission, because the man who needs this most is the man who will keep finding every single reason to hold off for a better time. And every reason that he finds costs him another year of staying in the same cycle. So now let's get into how this actually works. Now, Betterment Academy is built on 3 pillars, and all 3 get to the root of these emotional and behavioral problems. Now, pillar 1 is the pattern break. And most of what men try when they try to start fixing these problems that they have is that they try to start by changing the behavior. Say this instead of that. Wait this long before replying. Be less reactive. See, all of this is just trying to change the output of an unconscious pattern. Really, again, they're just strategies to manage the symptoms rather than addressing the actual problem at hand. But that's not what we do. We get to the root of the actual problem. I'm talking about these specific moments that have shaped how you see yourself and how you see relationships. Stuff that happened long before these problems that you're struggling with right now ever came into your life. Now, that might be your relationship with your parents or with your siblings, the bullying or the feeling of isolation that you felt at school, that ex who seriously betrayed you and burnt your trust, or really any experiences that brought you feelings of shame, of abandonment, and genuine feelings of inadequacy. Whatever those experiences were for you, they taught you one incredibly damaging lesson: that you're not good enough, that love is unsafe, and that you need to earn approval by being someone that you're not. And this is why you pedestalize people, why you have needy and people-pleasing tendencies, why you walk on eggshells, and why you never feel secure in your relationships. They all come from the same root, a damaged sense of self-worth. Now think about your self-worth kind of like a bucket, and every painful experience in your life has all punched holes in this bucket of your self-worth. See, it is impossible to feel lovable, to feel worthy, and to feel secure when the thing that's meant to hold it all in is quietly leaking out the sides. And that's where we actually do the work. We go straight to those original experiences, those specific moments in your life that shaped how you see yourself and how you see relationships. The relationship that ended and you never really learned why. The moment that you learned that keeping the peace was safer than saying what you actually thought. The time you opened up and it went badly and you just decided to never be vulnerable again. See, until you actually go back and you resolve all of those experiences, they will just keep showing up in every single relationship, no matter how well you understand them. See, we go through each of these experiences one by one, not by talking about it endlessly, not by trying to pretend that it's not a problem, but by genuinely resolving it so that it stops dictating how you show up in your day-to-day life. And we also rebuild how you see yourself from the ground up, the specific beliefs about who you are, what you deserve, and how much you can trust people that they will actually stay. And we rebuild all of those beliefs from the ground up by going back through every single experience that built those beliefs in the first place, and by actually replacing them with something that's actually true. But there's one more piece to this pillar. See, most men only have one thing holding their entire identity up, their entire sense of self. Picture it kind of like a table, and that table only has one single leg, that leg being the relationship that you're in. Now, the moment that your relationship is tested, that whole table comes crumbling down and you lose yourself in the process. So what we do is we build the other legs, your values, your interests, your direction, and who you actually are outside of this relationship and outside of the validation that it gives you. I call this identity diversification, where you will become brutally aware of exactly who you are. You will learn how to meet your own needs, and you will stop placing that entire weight onto your partner. Next, we have pillar 2, which is the feedback loop. Now, obviously, the inner work is really important. Like, that is the foundation of this work. But in the process of doing all of this work, there may come times where you still collapse. In moments where she pulls back, or a conversation goes sideways, or something happens differently than how you expected it to go. And in those moments, you may find that your old response takes over before you even have the chance to think about it. So if there's no one there who knows your specific patterns to tell you exactly what just happened and why, and you're left doing what you've always done, which is just trying to control it yourself, or replaying conversations or replaying your head, coming to conclusions which are filtered through the same thinking that created the problems in the first place, and then spiraling out of control into anxiety. And that's exactly why we're going to create a tight feedback loop. So every fortnight, I'm going to send you a quick video reviewing all of your data from our calls, our messages, and from the processes that we worked through, and give you an actionable plan for the fortnight ahead so that you never fall off course. And every month, we'll go deep on a one-on-one call and address any issues that have been coming up, and really to make sure that everything that you're learning is really sticking. And in between all of that, you will have direct access to me. Not a forum, not a chatbot, actually direct access to me on a daily basis, so that anytime you need something, I am there for you. When something happens with her, when one of your old patterns fires and you don't know what to do about it, you can just reach out to me and you will get a real response from someone who knows every single detail about your situation and who's also been exactly where you are and has had to overcome it. And one of my clients, Jaden, even said that all the journaling, the meditation, even the therapy, it never really helped because none of it really works unless you have someone there to guide you through it step by step. But more importantly, someone who actually cares about you and someone who's been there themselves. Now, finally, pillar 3 is the environment. So you will get access to a private group of men going through all of the exact same processes that you are. Not just a general self-improvement community, but men doing this specific work, who understand what you're dealing with because they're dealing with it too. Men who can actually call out the patterns that you can't see in yourself because they recognize it from their own lives. And every month we're going to run a group coaching session together, which really just consists of going in deep with live work directly on the patterns that are coming up for you and for other men in the community, and really covering real situations that we're going to be working through together. Going through real honest conversations with men who are battling the same issues that you're dealing with, and doing so in a room where everyone is working from the same foundation. So day to day, you will have access to men who are in it with you. The reason that matters isn't because of the accountability, it's actually because all of these patterns that you have felt stuck with, that you have felt shamed for having, you have thought that you are the only one going through it. But when you're surrounded by men who are dealing with the same stuff, that shame begins to fade away. And that's what the 3 pillars do together. The work changes you at an unconscious level so that you can finally stop doubting your worth and finally feel like someone who actually deserves a secure relationship. So now that you've got an understanding of how the 3 pillars work together, here's what happens if you just decide to close this video and go back to what you've always been doing. The next relationship will start the same way they all do. Something about her is going to feel different, you are going to feel different, and you will tell yourself that this time it will be different. And for a month, maybe even 2, it is. But then she goes quiet for a few hours. Or maybe she pushes back on something and you watch yourself do the same thing again. You start overthinking worst case scenarios, you get jealous, you appease, or you completely shut down. And you end up apologizing for something that wasn't even your fault, just to put an end to all that tension. Over time, of course, she starts to see it. And the thing is that once she does, something about the way that she looks at you will change, and you will both feel it. And the thing is that from that point, it's usually just a matter of time. That relationship then ends, and the one after that, and the one after that. Meanwhile, you look around and your friends are all settling down. You're watching people around you build the life that you actually want, and you'll be wondering what's wrong with you. And you'll question why every good thing that you have finds a way to slip through your hands the same way every single time. So you start pulling back, you stop putting yourself out there as much, and you tell yourself that you're just going to take some time to focus on other things. But the real reason is just that you're tired of showing up and ending up in the exact same place, heartbroken, lonely, and forced to put a persona on that you know isn't who you really are, so that you can hide from everyone else when they come up and ask how you're doing. And the longer things continue, the harder it becomes to believe that you can actually change. Because every relationship that didn't work out becomes, again, more evidence of the same beliefs that hold you back. And every time that pattern comes back up, even when you genuinely thought you had done the work, every version of yourself that you told yourself you were done being all ends up getting stuck. In other words, it all ends up just never changing. And then you get to your late 30s, your 40s, maybe even your 50s. And although your career and your financial position and maybe even your health are all good on paper, the things that actually matter to you, like feeling like you're enough, having a secure relationship, and being the man that you know that you are capable of being, is something that you feel like you will never have, that you know everyone around you has. And the thing is that that's not because you didn't try. It's because everything you did only reached the symptoms and never addressed the deeper rooted problem. And I know what this looks like. I've seen it happen to people I love, and I've even been in parts of that journey. And I built Better Men Academy so that men don't have to finish living the rest of that story. And the longer you wait, the more you convince yourself that this is just who you are. It isn't, but that just gets harder to believe with every year that passes. So now you've got two options. The first is that you can just close this video and go back to what you've been doing. Another relationship that starts well and ends the same way. Another version of yourself that you promised that you were done being. Your mate settling down around you while you're still trying to figure out what keeps going wrong. That loneliness that hits you on a Sunday afternoon that no one else knows about. And somewhere in your late 30s or your 40s, looking back at the years that you spent understanding the problem and still never being able to change it. Or you click the link below and you book a call. Really just to have an honest conversation about where it is that you're actually at, where I'll ask you what's going on, I'll get to know you a bit more in detail, and we can figure out the best things for you to do moving forward. And if everything aligns, I'll tell you exactly where we would start. And if it isn't, then I'll point you in the right direction anyway. And either way, you will walk away with more clarity than you came in with. So if any part of this video felt like it was describing you to a T, then click the link below, book a call, and I will see you on the other side.